Now let's find out how C++ handles its inputs and outputs. So far, with C, you've been using write brackets and read brackets on standard input and output to be able to make all your standard I/O manipulations. Fair enough. But remember, it was quite complicated to set up. You had to specify a file descriptor every time, send the pointer to what you needed to write or read, and when you had to read, you needed a buffer on which you could fetch the data, specifically the size, receive the size. All in all, it was quite complicated to set up. Remember the get_next_line bracket code, for instance. If you wanted to do a little smart processing, it'd quickly become complicated. C++ will solve this problem in a quite definitive way, I must say, with a number of extra syntax that will change your life. First of all, C++ will provide you magical objects. They are sin and coot, corresponding respectively to the standard input and output. Just by writing or reading these objects, which actually look pretty much like simplified file descriptors, you'll be able to fetch or write data on the standard input or output. C++ will also provide you two new operators, back arrows and forward arrows, that will allow you to copy these data flows. Let's see an example to illustrate all of this. It's not the right code. Sorry, it's okay. Here, let's see. Here we have the perfect Hello World example in C++, meaning how to use this magical object, coot, from the standard namespace. Remember what I told you in the previous video. We're going to use this new back arrow operator that will allow us to redirect a flow to the standard output. Here in particular, the data I'm going to redirect to the standard output will be the hello world string. Then I'm going to redirect it again something to the standard output. It's a new little object of the standard namespace, ENDL, corresponding to the carriage return. You probably know that based on your operating system, the carriage return may vary. On a standard Linux, a simple \n is enough, but on Microsoft OS's, it would be \r\n instead of just \n. Here, C++ saves you this trouble with the special standard::endl object. It will take care of the character output, allowing to have a new line for you. So, in short, this line reads, in the standard output, I want to inject the hello world string followed by a carriage return. Very simple. Here we have another example. Input a word. That will be redirected to the standard output, and here I've chosen to not put a carriage return. Right below, you can see I use a second particular object called sin. If you're smart enough, you're probably thinking it refers to the standard output. And I'm going to use the opposite operator, greater than, that will allow me to fetch data from the standard input. Here I want to redirect this data in a variable, a buffer, that I declared as 512 character array. You can use whatever you want. The goal here is to remain simple and display again whatever was entered using count. I want to redirect to my standard output the uEntered : bracket followed by my buff variable followed by j string and a carriage return. As you can see, it's very simple, natural syntax, and much more practical than using read brackets and write bracket. To make sure of that, let's try together to compile this little program. It's compiled. Let's run it. We can see here that as promised, I did get a hello world followed by a carriage return. Then it says input a word, so here we expect a word on the standard input. As you can see, there is no carriage return because I haven't put any. I'm going to write, say, unicorn, then press enter. And we have uEntered : bracket unicorn displayed. So it did work. Thank you to these few lines. You can see I'm able to write a program, able to write and read from standard output. It's very simple, very dynamic, no problem. I will use to take advantage of this introduction on sin and count to show you the C++.com website. That will now become your new best friend. This is the link C++.com in plain letters. You'll find here all the documentation of the language. Here in particular, I open the page about iOS Stream. The include allowing us to use count and sin. And just by clicking, you can access all the documentation on these particular objects. You can see that there are actually quite a few more that I will let you discover in the documentation. I will also want to insist on the fact that we have here two little tabs. For C++ standards, C++ 9.8 and C++ 11. In this Piscine, we'll use C++ 9.8 because it's simpler and allows to better introduce the C++ language basics. C++ 11 is a little more complicated language that is perfectly interesting. But let's start with the basic things. We'll have time the opportunity to move on to C++ 11 in the projects following the Piscine. So I'll let you look into the documentation. It might be interesting for you to see how it's done, get familiar with the syntax and vocabulary. And when you're done, I'll see you in the next video. See you soon.